Welcome to the LowCarbMD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome back to the LowCarbMD podcast. Tro, here we go again. We have a real patient, someone who's kind of changed her own life and is changing other people's lives. How are you doing, man? Good to see you.
I'm doing great. Yeah, I think your advice a couple of weeks ago was, hey, we need to get real people here who have struggled. And one of those struggles and the overcoming of those struggles really caught my attention on Twitter, on social media. Today with us is Roxana Soetebeer. And what caught me about her story was, she's, basically reversed several issues in her own self. Sounds like against medical advice. And then she's really evangelized others around her and really helped others around her. She set up a great big Facebook group, which she kind of curates. She set up, some, led very interesting discussions on Twitter that I followed. So I said, this sounds like a person I'd love to interview and kind of understand more about what she went through, how she got there, and how did she climb out and escape. And, here she is, really investing her time and energy into really helping others also, just by passing out information and telling her story, helping other people overcome, obesity and diabetes. So welcome, Roxana. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
And we'd love to learn a little bit more about you and your story. So how did this all start? So where do we begin?
So it starts like almost 30 years ago. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And then the doctors immediately told me, no meat, no animal products, eat plant-based. And we're going to put you on, they wanted to put me on methotrexate. And then I said, oh, I would like to have children before I do that. And, so they put me 9 years on cortisone. I had my kids. But they told me, if you go off your medication, then it might never work again. So I was really afraid not to go off medication. I really believed everything they said, and I wanted to be a good patient. And like I thought I was doing the best I could do. But
was this in Europe? Was this in Canada? Where were you?
So at that time, I was still in Germany. I'm born in Germany. And then a few years later, I immigrated to Canada. That was 22 years or so.
So you're diagnosed in the German medical system, which I believe it's a publicly run medical system. Okay, they tell you, look, you have features of rheumatoid arthritis. And what were you feeling at the time? Did you have was it joint aches and joint swelling? What happened?
Yeah, I had multiple joints that were swollen. I could hardly walk. I was in a lot of pain. So it really put the fear in me. I did not want to live my life like that, but I didn't really have I didn't know what to go by. They said if it's rapidly progressing, I'd be in a wheelchair soon. And if not, if you take my medication, I'd be fine. And so it is a public health system, but it's actually a pretty good system. So yeah. I didn't think the advice I was getting wasn't good.
Okay, so you had no reason to challenge or think twice, and you were scared, and they probably were telling you the best they could. It sounds like they were, good doctors, and they really put a fear in you, but then they relegated you to a long time of steroids. It sounds like.
Yeah, it was 9 years of steroids. I had 3 boys, and I'm happy I did it. I would do it all over again, but I kept gaining weight. And I tried my best not to gain weight. So eating healthy, like lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, oatmeal. And I even considered Cheerios healthy because it says so on the packaging. I really had no clue what healthy was.
Why did they tell you not to eat meat? Can I understand? Because I didn't understand. So, you're diagnosed with rheumatoid. So why would a doctor say, don't eat meat? You have rheumatoid arthritis. You can't have animals.
They explained that the animal fat causes or fuels inflammation. And they said, replace all animal fat with vegetable oils, and that will calm the inflammation. And I completely believe that.
How do you think that, how do you think they got there? How do you think like a doctor or somebody who's really should know the implications of what they're saying and what they're recommending, how do you think they get there to make that recommendation to you? What system do you think would need to be in place for a doctor to say something like that?
So back then I thought solid science. I really never doubted it. Everyone was saying it. And I actually eliminated all meat for a while. I went vegan, not for political reasons, but no animal products. What I now believe is that the studies done in the 60s that said saturated fats are bad, that it stems from them, and then the medical system being paid, or the education, like being more profit-driven, not so much patient-driven.
But you're in the German system, which is not, there's this public system, right? So help me understand why.
I know, but the US, when they put out recommendations, the world listens. When they develop the pyramid, the world does the same pyramid. When they do the plate, now the world does the plate. It's when they say red meat is bad, the world thinks red meat is bad.
Roxana knows the secret of how it works. And when the US makes recommendation, everyone follows it with no data.
So are you suggesting that, despite, having a great access to care and a great kind of network of systems and smart people in the care there, that the issue may have been that in medicine, sometimes we follow more than question?
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem with following, but I think in nutrition the studies or the evidence isn't there. They say red meat is associated with cancer or with heart disease and all these, but they base that on studies that are observational studies. They can't gain any proof from that, but they presented it as proof. And so I think that's the problem. I don't think anyone is, I would say most people are not evil, or they just don't know better.
Yeah, I think they, you make assumptions and they go, oh, well, this must be true because we see certain things, and we make these, there's no randomized controlled trials that they're saying, hey, meat's causing inflammation. And we have tons of examples of people eating meat and their inflammatory markers go down. We have the data that clinically. So, but back then, I think, how old were you, by the way, when you got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis?
27.
And before that, you were fine?
Oh, yes. I was, every
kinda...
time I went to see a doctor and they asked me, what medications are you on? What is your health history? I could always leave everything unchecked. And I thought that was awesome. And then that changed.
And did you have any big life stress or surgery or anything that happened before you got diagnosed with autoimmune disease?
I got married.
Oh, yeah, no. That'll do it. That's what Tro's wife says that was one of the most traumatic things that happened to her.
Yeah,
life.
but there, at that time, I had trauma later in life, like severe things. But until then, I didn't. I was good. Like I was in good shape. I was athletic, and I was competitive. Did martial arts and stuff like that. Like I was at the top of my game.
Did you have any family history of rheumatoid arthritis or anything like that, or yeah,
nothing.
Okay,
nothing.
So did they say anything about not eating processed foods?
No, they never said anything about processed food. It's just the animal fats that they would fuel inflammation, and I just took them for their word.
And did they tell you, hey, we think that this could be a thing? Hey, look, if we notice that some people tend to have lower inflammation, or do they say, no, you really need to just cut out the animal fats and this is what you have to do?
Yeah, well, cut out the animal fats, eat vegetables, exercise. Never stop exercising to not lose movement. And yeah, that's it. And never stop taking the medication. Because if I did.
Okay. And what happens next? So now 10 years later, 10 years later, you have 3 beautiful kids. What happens next?
But like by the time the third one was born, I was obese, like probably class 2 or 3. During all that time, I started losing weight. I tried losing weight. So I did Weight Watchers. I did, one thing was I could trick my body into not going into starvation mode by eating at the basic metabolic rate. Like these ideas you pick up. Yeah. And then I heard about Atkins, and then I thought, oh no, never, heart attacks. So I try to eat healthy, lots of like I said, fruit, oatmeal, milk, lots of skim milk. And I was introduced to skim milk in the hospital, actually. So I tried to do my best. But then, of course, when I get hungry, like I do a diet, I lose 20, 30 pounds, and I get more and more miserable, more and more hungry. And then I question myself, do I need to lose that much weight? Or I deserve a treat. So then I get my treat and then off the wagon. And not like for days or months, but like for years and many years.
So this sounds like the average person's struggle, not knowing what they're up against, not the greatest advice. We're unclear of the intentions, whether they were well-meaning doctors, whether they knew better, or whether they were just inappropriately, giving their thought process to the authorities that be in the United States who said this is the way. So we're not sure which one of those 3 it was, but in the end, you're relegated with steroids and suffering.
Yeah. And then after the kids were born, I was put on Imuran. They put me on 300 milligram. And I looked it up. That's a dose that they give to kidney transplant recipients. So that's a high dose. And I still had inflammation. I still was in pain. They I was on OxyContin for years, which brought its own problems. Like it's a horrible drug. And
did anybody say, wait a second, she stopped eating the animal meat and her inflammation isn't going down, maybe we should liberalize her diet back? Did anybody ever say that?
So that was back in Germany, and no one mentioned that. I did eat meat again. So I basically ate pretty much according to the guidelines.
When you initially
very high in carbs.
When you initially went on the no meat diet, did your symptoms get better?
No. And I tried it. I promised it to my father. He said, try it. And then I did for maybe 6-9 months, something like that. And I didn't get better. And because I really liked meat, I didn't want to keep giving it up.
So you did it and you tried it. Now, did you think at that point, wait a second, if I did what they told me, maybe I shouldn't listen to these people? Like, did it cross your mind that like just going, like, I know this is revisionist, but I've done what they asked and yet here I am?
I just thought I'm much sicker than I thought. So if diet doesn't work, I just have to take the medication. It never crossed my mind that there was a dietary option. Now I know because my joints are fine. Like the inflammation is gone. My CRP level is now 1.2. It's gone. But and I'm off Imuran too for 9 months, I think, but 1 year almost.
You gave away the ending. We want the.
Oh.
No, that's good. That's good.
It's all right. All right. So okay.
Just one quick, sorry, Coach. Just one quick question. When you were pregnant, did your symptoms get better when you were during your pregnancies?
Yes, they did. Being pregnant made it much easier, which was good because my babies were heavy, and I did feel better. I would have gone for more pregnancies, but didn't work out.
You had a husband.
But no, actually, the third one was premature, and not very much though. But the water broke at what was it, 30 weeks, And then they kept me in hospital bed rest, and he was born at 36 weeks. I just didn't want to chance it. I also get better when I'm sick, like when I get a cold. And I think the immune system is just otherwise busy. So these two things would make it better.
Okay, so now you have your kids and you're doing what you were told. You kind of saw it didn't really work out, so you went just back to eating quote unquote healthy. And what happens?
I could not get to a healthy weight. I was increasingly also getting anxious, like little things would just rattle me. I was in constant pain. I couldn't sleep well. At one point, I had my carpal tunnel done because my wrists swelled so much that they put pressure on the nerve, and I couldn't sleep like 3 days straight. It was horrible. I didn't want to participate in anything because I didn't have I wasn't fit enough to stand long enough. I wasn't even fit enough to stand for 5 minutes to have a conversation, or to sit somewhere for more than an hour because my back would start hurting. I was just completely unfit. I was unhappy. I was getting bigger and bigger, and I developed more diseases. So it was not a good situation.
And when you were on the Imuran, did you come off the prednisone, or were you doing both?
I think there was like a weaning off the prednisone, starting the Imuran and then weaning off the prednisone. So it was not meant to be both.
But even once you came off the prednisone, it was still really hard to lose weight, it sounds like.
Oh yes, I at that point I probably was very insulin resistant, and the something that really strikes most people as odd is that I didn't eat and get fat because I ate too much, but I was hungry. So it's the other way around. You don't eat, or you don't gain fat because you eat, but you eat for the fat and then gain fat. It's weird.
So what happened? So how did you change and do what you're doing now?
So I was then diagnosed with NASH. The Imuran did a number on my liver, and my liver levels were always elevated. And the doctor just saw that and said, it's okay, she's on Imuran. So that explains that. And then I was diagnosed with NASH. And NASH is a little worse than fatty liver. It's an inflamed fatty liver. So it's the stage before you get cirrhosis. And that's lethal. So it didn't faze me. The doctor said, drink coffee, lose weight. That's it. And then acid reflux, because I was so big. And yeah, I lost my train of thought.
So you have rheumatoid arthritis, obesity, fatty liver. I'm sure on steroids, you had some element of diabetes.
Not back then, but one of the pregnancies said that I had just like almost gestational diabetes. I should watch what I eat. That was the advice. And then then I wasn't put on statins, of course. Everyone is put on statins. And after that, I developed diabetes. And
you went on a statin, and then you developed diabetes.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether that's causal. I know there's a connection, but I don't think it was necessarily.
No, it's definitely causal. Women who go on statins will develop worsening diabetes, and if they have diabetes, they'll require more insulin. Not to say that it's just the cholesterol energy model, right? I mean, it is. So it's not
the sugars converted over to the fat in the liver, and then LDL, and so the statin drug's blocking that step.
Okay, so I mean, It's not to say it's wrong or right. I'm just editorializing as we go along. So now you're on more medications, you're still suffering. Metformin for the okay.
And then you got mood problems and hurting and just chronic pain. All this, it's a disaster.
Sounds like a disaster. So how do you? I'm just wondering.
There's coming more.
Oh,
I also then my son is type 1 diabetic. When he was diagnosed, he was 8 years old, And for the longest time, I went into his bedroom in the morning, just feeling whether he was still warm. That was like extremely difficult to deal with. And so that was one of my traumas that made everything worse. And so my blood sugars were not too bad, but my A1C was actually 8.5. And I never realized how bad my blood sugars actually were. And then something happened and my blood sugars shot up to the high 400s 4 weeks straight. And when I couldn't think clearly anymore, 3 a.m. in the morning, I went into my son's room and borrowed some short-acting insulin. I was already on long-acting insulin for a while, but it kind of, all of a sudden, it decompensated. So I injected the insulin, and then I thought, oh, did I maybe take too much? Like, are you thinking clear? So I called up a friend in Germany, and he was sitting in the morning train on his way to work. And he said, I think you're good. After I gave him the numbers, we crunched the numbers. I think you're good, but call me every hour. And to stay awake, watch Dr. Stephen Phinney. And I did that. And it kind of completely switched my mindset. Before, I was completely hopeless. I thought I failed at everything, and there was just nothing left for me to do. But at that night, I had a very clear vision that I would not make it past 2 or 3 years. And I thought I had to do something. And Dr. Stephen Phinney, he explained how it works, why it works, and how people perform better on keto. And then I thought, well, this is a no-brainer. I'm going to try this. And this is what changed. It gave me an outlook.
What year was that?
That was October 2019.
Oh, this is kind of recently.
Yeah.
So coming on 3 years.
Yeah, it was an older video, but I happened to stumble on just the right video. It was a 2-part video.
And where did you watch that video?
On my phone.
No, like YouTube, or what was it?
YouTube.
YouTube. So you had an amazing medical system. You had 2 of them. You went from one to the other, Germany to Canada. You had countless doctors. They gave you dietary advice. They watched as your fatty liver worsened, and they told you to do things that really didn't improve your quality of life at all.
Lose weight.
Right? And they gave you advice that I'd say is probably bad, looking back
the
on
dietitians too.
Yeah. So how does this happen in a world where we all mean well and mean to do well? How does this happen? Right? Like, if doctors are, if me and Brian we're trained to help at a young age, right? How does it happen that we failed you?
So I think it's the system. I read this book by Professor Lustig, Metabolical, and he explained how first doctors receive hardly any training, like a week or a lecture, and that's it. And then it's, I don't remember the exact what exactly was going on, but the Rockefellers were involved, and they thought, oh, here we have a system that we can use to make more money. So that's what happened. So they took over the education.
It's money, but how do we, so what happens next? You watch Phinney and something opens in your eyes. So something starts to make sense, right? In 2019, that's around the time we may have that author of that study that showed that low carb improved chronic pain. That was 2019, the trial came out. So there's even data at that point that low carb, in the literature, that low carb improves chronic pain, something you suffered with for a long time. So what changes? Like, what do you do? How did you do it? How did you implement such a drastic change?
So first I talked to my husband about it, and he was in the mindset that I was before. So he said, no, keto, don't. And then I said, like I was bubbling over. I was so excited. And I told him, yes, I have to try it. And I tried to explain to him why. And then he said, but at least ask your doctor. And I said, oh, sure, I will. And I printed out like a pack of paper and brought it to the appointment. And she said, like she came in with a smile on her face and said, you don't have to convince me. Do it. Do it.
Who is this doctor? I want to know. So we can send our patients to them because Canada, we have Jason Fung, we have, what's her name? Benoit Roy. We have, who do we have? We have another doctor, Gazigian. So, okay, got it. So your doctor supported you. Okay.
Yes, 100%. And I also saw an endocrinologist, and he can be dangerous, but I can't argue with results. Do it. And then I had my rheumatologist, and she said, for a moment she froze. She told me, hey, your kidneys are doing great again. And then I said, yeah, I know, I'm doing keto. And then she said, you can't do keto, it will destroy your kidneys. And I thought I was gonna I wanted to laugh, but she looked at me, and I knew if I had laughed, she would have punched me. So I didn't say anything. She said, no, you need to do a strictly plant-based diet. And then I said, okay, I'll think about it. And of course I didn't.
What do you think about, can you help me understand? I want to understand, because you said, I don't think anybody is bad, right? You said, I don't think anybody is evil. These are your words, right? And I want to come back.
I think so.
I want to come back because you said it was the system. It is money, right? It's just the money in the system. And so let's just talk about.
I think we can clarify this a little bit. I think what we're saying is the doctors who were treating you were they were acting on the best information that they had, and they were trying to do something to help you. The people above your doctor were telling them what to do. So your doctor was just following the orders of someone else. And there may be some evil on the upper echelons of medicine where they say, well, I have a financial gain of not saying certain things.
But what about that doctor, Brian?
I have an idea about that doctor.
Yeah.
I think she is a hardcore vegan. So it's not only about eating plant-based, it's also about the perceived morals. And I think like that in combination with what she learned may have made her say that.
So Brian, if you have somebody who eats a bunch of plants and comes to you and does miraculously better, and they come to tell you, and you see their kidney function improves and their rheumatoid arthritis symptoms improve, what do you say, Brian?
I say, hey, if you're feeling better, your numbers look better, and you're doing great, keep doing what you're doing.
Does it inspire you to kind of look into what exactly they did and figure out, hey, maybe there's something I don't know? Do you think that?
Absolutely. And you look and you say, okay, let's look at the vegan diet. And how does it work for rheumatoid arthritis? It's working in this one.
Yeah. And actually, if you go down that literature, you'll see that there's some data on lectins, and lectins, decreasing certain, interleukins in some certain studies, decreasing symptoms in certain autoimmune conditions. I mean, it's been studied. There's other things that looking at, the inflammatory, issues with certain people and how they respond to dairy and how they respond to certain meats. Even some people I've had have an allergy to meats, right? So, tick-based allergy. Anyway, so help me understand, why did she, that's what I would do, Brian. Is that,
well, and you look at it, we all do what works for our experience, right? You and I have had success eating a certain way. So then you're going to be biased towards that. So this doctor who's been vegan,
right?
Who's been vegan saying, look, I'm healthy, just do what I'm doing, you'll be healthy. But the doctor doesn't have rheumatoid arthritis or diabetes or obesity and all these other problems, right? So if you're metabolically healthy, you can get away with a bigger permutation of diet. If you're really metabolically sick, you got to be more strict. And that's kind of what we're talking about. Is it's not a one size fits all. There's a continuum.
Do you think it's a compassion issue? Do you think it's a lack of curiosity? I'm curious, Roxana, do you think it's a compassion issue, a lack of curiosity, or why did you get that response?
I think she was so deep into veganism that if I challenged that, it would have to. She would have to admit his mistake, and admitting mistakes is so difficult. I mean, I know that I like to admit mistakes because I think then I'm more believable. If I do something wrong, if I say something wrong, I admit it because why would I double down? But she decided, and most people decide to double down. It's unbelievably difficult to admit a mistake. I actually shared with her the video that I saw for the dietary changes that I made, exactly like targeted for the rheumatoid arthritis. That was one of Dr. Berry's videos. And she said, oh, okay, but she didn't write it down. She didn't want to know. She did not even want to investigate it.
So, well, so now we're getting to the heart of it. I think we finally arrived. So what would you say to somebody who is a healer, who has seen and viewed healing with her own eyes or his own eyes? I don't know if this is she was whoever it was, right? And says, I do not want to investigate this. What is the quality of that person whose mission it is to heal?
So once I was of meds, she said, you're not compliant and I can't treat you anymore. But if you flare up again, you can have another referral and I'll take you back. And so I will never, ever see her again because I just can't. I saw her eyes and I won't be able to talk to her again.
Yeah,
What happened to your health? What happened? What else happened to your health? So your rheumatoid arthritis improved? So
I watched this video by Dr. Berry, and he said, if you want to heal autoimmune, go on carnivore. I didn't do that. I ate keto, but he mentioned a few things not to eat, and those were legumes. I mean, and on top of keto, of course, sugar, grains, and all that stuff. Legumes, garlic, and onion. And I thought, oh, I can do that. And then I read a lot about nightshades. I know there's no evidence about nightshades.
That's not true.
I also know
that's not true.
So that's what I think I know. I think I know there's a lot of no evidence, but there's so many people talking about it that I thought when I go up, I'm going, like, I'm doing everything I can. So I eliminated nightshades as well. So that included pea protein for the legumes. So no shakes and nothing. That included all the spices.
You were doing pea proteins?
No, I wasn't doing them, but I had vegan shakes.
Yeah, let me tell you, the pea proteins are, they're contaminated with high levels of cadmium, arsenic, and actually lead. So
yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
The Clean Label
those are all
Project,
natural. Those are all natural, Tro.
Even the organic ones. The Clean Label Project went and looked at every organic plant protein on the market and saw that they were contaminated with heavy metals. By the way, all of those can increase coronary artery calcium, arsenic, cadmium, and lead. They've been shown to increase coronary calcium. So okay, and with regards to the nightshades, there is some data. It's just very early data. When you look at the data for lectins, nightshades, these things that are commonly said by rheumatologists, autoimmune kind of people, there's not strong data. There's some like little bits of pieces of data. So I agree with you. It's not strong at all, but there is some. But I guess if you look, you can always find some data to support you.
There's so many accounts. There were so many accounts talking about this. I just wanted to make sure not to leave out anything. And it would give me, if it would just give me an edge, that would be good.
So you did an elimination diet. You're like, I'm going to eliminate as much as I can, and let's see what happens. So what happened?
But I didn't see it as an elimination diet. I saw it as eating meats and eggs and fish and shrimps and not so many nuts and even a little bit of chocolate. My keto treats, my keto bricks, my some not too many keto shakes, but that's all I have. Like the only two commercial products I have. Other than that, it's all whole food. nothing processed, because I really can't buy anything processed. There's either one of the ingredients, there's always one of the ingredients in there I can't eat.
Got it. Okay. And what happens to your health?
Okay, now, so I was, at the time I was on Imuran. My
so let's just tell the people, Imuran, guys, is a very strong medication to suppress the immune system, commonly used in very severe autoimmune disease. It increases your risk of infections. It has some other issues, but it's a lifesaver for people who have a transplant, or it's a lifesaver for people who have very severe uncontrolled autoimmune disease.
And my autoimmune disease was controlled in that my joints didn't deform. So that I didn't have to deal with. But I had constant inflammation. My CRP levels were like 60 and up. And I was just in pain all the time. I couldn't, like picking up something from the floor, I couldn't squat because my knees were so full with fluid. And when I started that, I didn't notice like an immediate, it wasn't like a switch. Other things were like a switch, but that one wasn't. But as time passed, I noticed all the inflammation was gone. The pain was gone. I can walk stairs. Like before, I would walk stairs like one step at a time with support of the rail. And now I just walk the stairs and I'm pain-free. I even enrolled in Taekwondo, and I loved martial arts when I was younger, and now I can do it again. And I can do the whole 1.5 hours. My heart rate is up there like 150, 160 the entire time. But I can do it, and it's such a good feeling that I am mobile again and not in pain. And like that's one of the non-scale victories. I have many of them.
Well, can you talk to us about scale and other health markers? How did those improve? So
I dropped, and my top weight was 313. And I started counting at 300 because that's where I started my keto, and I dropped 111 pounds. So I went into, when I went below 200, I went into Wonderland, like the number one. And then shortly after, I went into being overweight and not obese anymore.
That's a huge victory
for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And how long did it take you from the time you changed your diet till the pain got better and you started feeling better?
When I started keto, it only took a few days to feel better, like that.
And you were still on Imuran?
Yeah.
I was still on Imuran then. Yeah.
How long did it take till you could come off that?
For the Imuran was the beginning of last year. So it would be about a year now.
And you've been off it for a year. And then how about the insulin?
The insulin, I'm off. I was 7 months into the diet. So it would have been after 21 months. No, wait. 7 months into the diet. So 21 months ago. I've been off insulin. And my A1C when I started keto was 8.5. But because of that week of the high 400s, had I had one in 2 or 3 months' time, it would have been probably above 10 or more. And then within 3 months, it dropped to 5.6, then to 5.2, and then it stayed there for a year, and now it's 4.8.
Off of medications?
Off of, yes. No metformin, no insulin, no other diabetes meds, nothing. And I am still on thyroid meds. But,
now, do you still have the same primary who said, hey, go for it and take a look at it, see if it helps you?
Yes.
Yeah. And what does your primary say seeing you now?
She's amazed. I love her. Like I don't think she ever gave me bad advice.
I have goosebumps because the important thing is when you started telling this story about going to your primary with all this stack of information, I thought your primary, and this is the attitude that doctors will have, they'll say, look, your Google search does not match my medical degree. I know what I'm talking, right? And she loved you enough and cared enough to say, hey, if you want to try it, let's take a look. And, I don't know much about it, but let's try it and see how you do. And I'm going to support you in that, because Tro and I are getting patients all the time because their doctor says, you're crazy what you're doing, but you're getting better and you're off. When I hear your story, the only people who will cry because of your story out of sadness are the pharma executives. They're like, oh my gosh, she stopped all these medicines. Oh, if people do this, right? This is bad. But your doctor now has the reward of seeing you now not being miserable and depressed and hurting, and you can't exercise. It's amazing that this is like when we see stories like this is why patients like you make us smile, because we know we can help you. If you're invested and we're invested, we can make a huge difference and get you off meds. Like, the angels sing, we say when we stop the meds, that's from Dr. Unwin. And that's so exciting.
The statins were a little bit of another story. That was a little harder to convince her.
Well, I mean, you have to look into the end organs, right? Does your carotid have plaque? Does your heart have plaque? I think, things change, right? So if I had, somebody who had an autoimmune flare and it did fine for years, right? But now they have a flare, I may use a medication, right? Like, so I think, these things are tough to reconcile. Like we always want to think meds are bad, and that's not true. There are some people, I have zero hesitation recommending a medication. Right. So
yeah,
I think
like my son, my son is on insulin. He's type 1 diabetic. He would not survive without insulin. Bingo. And I take thyroid meds. Now I consider them actually thyroid replacement. So I feel I need those. If I don't take them, I would be a mess. I think certain medications, of course, like certain anti-seizure drugs, maybe they should try it first too. But if it doesn't work, then yes. I'm not against medications. If I have another flare, I will be really quick on medication because I'm doing everything to prevent a flare. And if nothing of that works, of course I have to go back on medication.
Yeah, bingo. I mean, this sort of approach requires a good physician partner, right?
Yeah.
To understand your goals and try to meet you where you are. I mean, what an inspiring story. I have to imagine. I know, people have probably reached out to you. And so how do you say, wait a second, I can't just keep this all to myself? And, you start a website, you start a Facebook group. When does that all happen?
So I have been active on Facebook for a while. Because of my son, I was in Libre groups and already managed 4 Libre groups. And then I thought, I think I need to make my own group because this needs to be discussed. So I founded a group that's called Reversing Insulin Resistance. And it is a keto low carb group. So I make that clear before members enter. It is emphasizing a non-medical approach, but I don't say you can't discuss medications, but other groups say, Mike, I want to lose weight. What's the best medication? And those questions, no. But if someone says, I'm using this medication for that, or my doctor said I should take this medication, then we can explain why or why not. I worked on guides which explain what is keto, why does it work, why is it not dangerous, why is it sustainable for life, and all these questions. And then I did the website more like as a platform to bring people to the group, but also with a lot of information. The website is reversing-insulin-resistance.com.
So this is the problem, Brian. I want to just highlight something here, right? So Brian was like, Tro, I don't want to take on the world like you. Tro, I don't, I'm going to but the reality is, Roxanna, we've made an app, right? And it's free to use just as a community, right? We want to start
I have that app
building
too, yeah.
social
very good.
networks, right? So we want to get people to create these social networks. Do you want to know why? Because you probably have helped more people than that vegan rheumatologist.
I'm certain.
You've probably
and a video from Dr. Finney, one video you watch and it changes your life, right?
Yeah. And he must have changed a lot of lives.
No, see, that's the problem. They all went back to their doctors, right? They watched the video, right? And they went back to their doctors in the system that you said is probably not evil, right? And their doctors said, you shouldn't do that. That's crazy, right? And they were like, why wouldn't I trust these people? Why wouldn't I? They're not evil people. And you may be right. But that's the sad, this is what we're up against. Right? This is what we're up against. And I don't know how to define it. Brian, I've talked to Brian about it. We call it like the medical matrix, the obesity medical matrix.
I think it's a huge problem. I think the crux of the problem really is that medicine's changed drastically over time, and we've accepted things to be truth that we don't know are truth and we think they're truth, and because everyone says it has to be true, right? So I think that's the problem, and the biggest problem we have is doctors are overworked and they're stressed out and they have guidelines and they have to check the boxes, and if they don't check the right boxes, they're not a good doctor. But if they're doing all that, they don't have time to spend with the patient, try to figure out what the root cause of the problem is. The easiest thing to do is to say, oh, your blood pressure's high, here's a drug. You know, I love Ben Bickman and I love him as a person, but as a scientist, you know, I have this one picture I show him. Like, look, here's insulin resistance in the middle, and here's all the diseases causally related, not associated, causally related to high insulin levels. And then you say, how many doctors in the United States or in the world check an insulin level? Right? And we it's clear as day when you see it, say, let's treat the insulin problem and see what happens to all these other. That's what you did. You took all these bubbles on the outside, like it looks like a flower, and you plucked all the petals off. This disease, this drug, this drug. And so, because all the drugs, not that drugs are bad, but the drugs are all going to have side effects. And they're all going to have problems. And then you take another drug for that side effect, and you get into this crazy snowball of problems. So I think there's a lack, like Tro, I know you're thinking it's a lack of curiosity, a lack of saying, hey, let me think outside the box. It's working for her. Maybe like Dr. Unwin, he saw it work for one patient, said, let me apply this to a few other people and see if it works for them.
Do you know what it is, Brian? You know what it is? And I think I know. I think it's apathy, lack of curiosity, and maybe, just maybe, a greedy, evil system, right? It's the only way you can be that rheumatologist is if you know better and everything's an anecdote and nothing deserves to be looked into.
And if it's a one size fits all, you say everyone has to do the same diet. It doesn't work for some people. Carnivore doesn't work for everyone. Some people hate meat. So I'm gonna make you eat meat if you don't like it. So it's kind of figuring out what works for you and how, you know, and ultimately I think it's saying, okay, what am I willing to give up to feel better? You know, and I think the other huge part of this topic that we've kind of neglected so far, and I'd love to hear your take on it, is when you're on OxyContin, right? That's our saying, oh, you're in pain, here, take OxyContin. And this, and I haven't seen the whole,
that is the medical problem right there.
That was the problem.
What's causing it?
And when I was,
take this addictive substance to deal with the inflammation that I don't know about and I'm not curious about, and it's easier for me to write, and come back in 30 days so I can write it again. And if you don't see me, and I'm going to make myself more needed by putting you on this, it is evil. I'm sorry.
And you have to see me every month, and then I get a copay every month from you, right?
It is evil. And I think that I don't know how to, I don't know how to say it otherwise. I'm sorry that I'm so passionate, but like, how do we get people to get, I was there. I was that arrogant doctor. I mean, maybe I still am, you know, but how do we wake up other doctors, Brian? And Roxanne, what would you say if you could talk to that rheumatologist? What would you plead if you could go back to Germany and talk to that first doctor who told you don't eat meat? Like, what would you say to them?
Well, I would probably say, please show me the evidence. And then when he says, then I would say, well, there is no evidence. And then I would tell him about my story, and then I would tell him to reconsider. But it would be really,
but they would
so
say
difficult.
Your Google search is not, and your Google search and anecdote don't supersede my medical degree.
Yes, true.
What do you say to them now?
I would just provide them with studies.
Yeah.
And
your success and how you're doing better. So look, I'm off all these drugs you had me on. And tell me, I don't want to escape without talking. How did you come off the OxyContin?
I was on 80 milligrams a day. So wow. 40 in the morning,
which is a
and
big
40
dose.
Wow.
That's
at night.
Dose.
But the thing was, it was supposed to carry me over for 12 hours. And it is an addictive drug. As I understand now, it's synthetic heroin. I didn't know that then. So I took in the morning, and by late afternoon, I had these withdrawal symptoms. I just felt awful, and that was going on for a long time. So that was another thing that really messed me up. And then I said, it's not working. Like I can't go through this roller coaster anymore. And then they said, okay, we just add another 40, and then you take them 3 times a day. And granted, I didn't have these withdrawal symptoms anymore, but what I had was I would go from the kitchen from the living room to the kitchen, make myself a coffee. By the time I went back, I was drenched in sweat. I couldn't go anywhere because I would immediately be drenched in sweat. I couldn't function. I don't even know how I made it through that. I don't know how I raised my kids, them being successful, because they went through all this. I just have a very calm, I'm very patient in nature. So I think I was always there for them. So that was maybe enough. But the OxyContin was awful. And then my rheumatologist, another one, said, you don't need it anymore. I think I'm going to take you off. And then
that was the same rheumatologist? Wait, it was the same rheumatologist.
Different one. Oh my gosh.
That one retired. That was the one who put me on Imuran and then took me off OxyContin, put me on OxyContin, and then said, you don't need it anymore. And
you just
then
stopped
I said,
it cold turkey?
No, but that's what I thought.
Oh my gosh.
Of course, I had a breakdown right there in the office, and he said, no,
my goodness.
You go at your own pace. You just go very, very slowly. I will prescribe it until you don't need it anymore. And funny enough, I went very slowly. Funny enough.
How long were you on it, and how long did it take you to come off?
I was on it for several years, but I don't know exactly how long. And going off it was probably half a year to a year. Yeah, so like really slowly. I made a schedule. So
but you weren't having pain. It was because you would get all the symptoms of withdrawal when you stopped it.
Yeah. I could not even imagine ever not taking anymore. And of course, when I took it, I felt like, wow, it's a drug. So I mean, it's other people use it as a recreational drug. And it's funny, was the last pill was the hardest to take, because I knew after that I wouldn't take anymore. And I kept my stash for probably 5-7 years. And then by then I thought, okay, now it's chemically probably not safe to take it anymore. And then I threw it out.
Wow. That's something. I mean, this is something like, your story makes me so sad for what we've done in medicine. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, going back to what you went through, I'm older than Tro. So when I was in residency, we had someone from the DEA come in, and they said, look, pain is the 5th vital sign. You treat pain until the patient has no more pain. And I'm sitting there thinking, this is crazy, right? Because in the hospital, we have drug-seeking patients who are going to tell you they're in pain no matter what. I said, I have a question for you. If I have a patient who's drug-seeking and they keep saying they're in pain, I have to keep giving it. When do I stop? And they said, when they can no longer ask for it. When they can no longer ask for it, that means you're about to kill the patient and put them on a ventilator, because their addiction is so strong. And look and I said, you don't see there's going to be a problem in 10 years, guys? We're going to have a bunch of drug. Wow. Now, Tro, do you know what the #1 cause of death between 18 and 49 is in the United States? Fentanyl overdose.
Yep.
This was self-inflicted. And absolutely. Someone like you having 6 months of not even having pain anymore, and you can't come off a drug. That is astounding to me, right? And I've seen it over and over.
What do you think?
I think they even perceive that they are in pain when they are getting off. I didn't feel that, but many people say when I go off my pain meds, I'm in pain.
Roxana, can I just come back for a second? Because you said, I don't think this is evil. Right? Those are your words?
I don't think this is you.
I don't think this is evil.
Oh, evil.
Your words, right?
No, I think when people want to be doctors, that's what I think, is they do it with the motivation that they want to help people. And then they go into the system where they are not taught how to treat them, but how to treat the symptoms. So their tool is the prescription pad, not lifestyle advice. And correct me if I'm wrong, but they don't receive a lot of nutritional training, which would be a tool for all metabolic disease. So then the dietitians, I'm actually planning on going back to school, because I want to get a degree and then just be better well-rounded for this subject. I asked the Dietetics Association, and they said, you cannot teach keto because it's against the standards, And if you do, you lose your license. So I cannot be a dietitian in Canada, in my province, because they will just pull my license right away. That is a problem. That's not the people who are dietitians. They are bound by what they are allowed to say.
Yeah, I think let's come back, right? So who would agree to this system? Who would go on? Who would go along with the system, right? How does that happen? How does it continue to get propagated? People have to either be apathetic, right, or evil, in my opinion. And both cases, it's evil.
So like when I raised my kids, I gave them Cheerios because I thought it was the best. I was not apathetic. I was not evil. I just didn't know better.
It said heart healthy up in the top corner, so you knew it was heart healthy.
Yeah.
You can't, right? You were ignorant. Ignorant is different. You didn't know. You didn't know.
No, I wasn't ignorant. I just believed what they said.
They're the experts. They're the health experts, and you're following what they said. And you see it says heart healthy right there on the box, right? And
all the baby food they ate. Now, when I think about it, I think, but that happened. So I can't turn back time. But I know that I love my children.
We were all ignorant. We didn't know the amount of arsenic that's in baby food. We didn't know.
Yeah.
Right? We didn't know like the amount of contaminants in baby food. We didn't know that. We didn't know the BPA
and the sugar content.
Right? We didn't know we didn't know the soybean oil and the sugar that they put into why are they using soybean oil? Why soybean oil? Right? We were all, I'm not saying you were ignorant. We were like, I was a grown doctor. I was 350 pounds. I was ignorant. You know, I'm not, so I don't know if I didn't mean to come off saying you were ignorant, but.
Oh, no, I just think ignorant is too hard of a word even to describe yourself. I wouldn't describe you as ignorant.
I would have called myself lacking humility, ignorant, and arrogant. That's how I would have described my own.
I think the point is that we've learned. I think what we've learned is you can't unsee what you've seen. And so the problem is there's people with vested interests who don't want to see, because then they have to deal with it. Now you got to sit down. Like if I have my doctor at one of the big organizations, I have 8 minutes with a patient. Do you think I want to talk about low carb and keto and lifestyle change and stress management and, not taking drugs and not smoking? I mean, you don't have time. They don't have time to, in their defense. But the problem is the system doesn't say, let's educate all the doctors, right? Let's educate people. I love it. You know how many phone calls I've had from doctors that, their patient is sick like you were, and then we get them off meds like you do. How many call me and say, what the heck are you doing over there? None. No one calls. No one calls and says, hey, I'm curious. Like, who did I call? The first time I had a patient lose 40 pounds, reverse their hypertension, I called Jason Fung. I go, what the heck are you doing? This guy, my patient got better because of you. What are you doing? And I had to ask him, and I had to learn. I had to understand insulin resistance and why shooting everyone with insulin wasn't going to be the right answer, right? But the problem is we say high sugar, insulin gets rid of sugar. Here you go. Here's insulin. And they put you on insulin, which increases the inflammation, which, like, when we hear your story, it's like a country song. Now it's playing backwards because you're saying, oh, if I get all the inflammation better, then all my other stuff gets better too, including your mood, including your pain, include all these things that affect life. So this is what we keep saying on the podcast. I think at least I do, Tro, is that you can't have some guys put a rat in the cage and give him 50 grams of this and 20 grams of this and some kind of slop, and they go, okay, this is the diet everyone in the world eats because this mouse. The mouse isn't going through chronic pain like you were, mood problems, raising kids, stress of marriage, all these things that you're talking about. It's the real world. And so we have to be able to understand it's not one size fits all. Like, exercise more and eat less. That's what they told you this whole time while you were getting sicker and horrible. So the good news, the thing that, like, really, I know the trajectory you were on, and if you didn't make those changes, you would be on 12 or 14 more medicines right now, and you'd be miserable laying in bed, addicted to OxyContin.
I would be bedridden, and I might not be alive anymore. So my health was that bad. I was also supposed to go on blood pressure meds to protect my kidneys because my sugar was high. And then I said, no, I'm going to try this. And then we talked about blood pressure meds. And my blood pressure wasn't even that high. It was like well, it was too high. It was like around 140 over 80. And now it's usually around 110 over 65 or so. So that resolved itself. The kidneys were in trouble. That's what the doctors say. But I wasn't diagnosed with kidney disease. But they are in good range now. Like the kidney function is perfect, and I don't pee out protein anymore. And so they're doing great.
I mean, it
Your
just
doctor
sounds
said
like,
you're going to kill your kidneys, and your liver got healthy too.
And really, I was there. I you know that feeling when you want to burst out, but you can't because you're in a situation where it's inappropriate to burst out laughing. And I'm glad I didn't, because I'm sure she would have punched me. She looked at me
all
and
the
her
time.
eye twitched.
I do it. Roxana, you follow me on Twitter. You know, I do it all the time. You know, we have to make these people want to punch us because they're wrong and they're committing. We are wrong. Our profession has sat and watched the obesity and diabetes epidemic. We are wrong. We did something wrong. The calories failed, and we cannot subjugate more people to this. Right? We have to change. And I don't know how to do that, but I really appreciate you coming on. I know the story is going to be so powerful for people. Brian?
Yeah,
you know,
I don't want to stop. I mean, I want to make one more point, Tro, because
go ahead. Yeah.
We started this podcast because, you know, Tro and I were having personal success. I see him being a knucklehead on Twitter. I go, this is the guy I want to do this with, right? So, and was the best decision for sure. And so back then, that's when we watched Fetke going through trial, and you see Professor Noakes, what they went through. I'm like, this is crazy. Why are these guys, they're going through trials because they told people to stop eating junk food. This is insane. There's got to be more to this story. Now we're seeing there's more to this story. And the problem is, you know, we put ourselves out there starting the podcast because they say, well, it's outside the standard of care. And if you go outside the standard of care, you put yourself at risk, right? But I said, well, if we do a podcast and we could reach doctors and people and share stories, and this is our evidence. This is our evidence to say, look at this story. Where's the harm in this patient who was totally addicted to drugs, and you have all these problems and all this stuff, and you get better? Like, you go talk to her and tell her what she's doing is wrong, right? At some point, you can't unsee what you've seen. And that's what we're saying, is that we're seeing this over and over, and people can say, well, they're making it up. It's like, no, this is your story. Did you make up this story? No, it's your story. So it's amazing, but the standard of care is changing because people stood up and said the standard of care is wrong. Right now, the ADA, that's in their guidelines. So in Canada, when they're saying you can't teach low carb, it's in the ADA's guidelines that everyone's supposed to be following.
It's crazy.
As the most studied and preferred. And this is what us quacks have been talking about. Like, we're seeing it. We're not crazy if we're seeing the results we're seeing. And that's why it's so frustrating. Tro?
No, look, our 10th episode or 13th episode was somebody who poured their heart out, just like you have, and said that they struggled with alcohol, they struggled with, you know, other addictions and
pornography,
you know, and they were able to overcome it. They were able to overcome it. And somebody heard this, right? Somebody who manages a journal on, I forget what it was, reached out to us, says this has to go in a journal. We have to publish this. This cannot just be your guys' podcast. And then lo and behold, 1 year later, the NIH finally does a study that shows that low carb diets cause a decreased need for medications for alcohol withdrawal and decreases the desire for alcohol. Right now, did I make any conclusions? Did we make any conclusions? No. Did they tell us our license should be revoked for sharing this story and asking some questions? Yes. Right? But what would it take? What system do we need, right, to say, you guys are crazy? Nobody should listen to you. You should have your license taken away. What system do you need to say you cannot teach about low carb in Canada? What systems do we need? And are those systems evil or not? That's the question I'm going to pose back to you, because you started today saying, I don't think they're evil.
There's one more thing. It's not just them. The doctors, if you reach doctors, they are multipliers. They have hundreds, if not thousands of patients. But it's also the patients in groups on Facebook. People are so, they have this steadfast belief, and they would rather die than try keto. They want they rather be on insulin than give it a try, because I was actually blocked from one group because I mentioned Dr. Funk too often. And I was blocked from another group because I mentioned keto and Dr. Funk too often. And it's so sad. It's so sad that these like regular people with no vested interest have this steadfast belief. And so that this is why I'm so active on Facebook and Twitter, because I want to reach those two. You will be reaching the doctors, and I try to reach the patients.
Oh, we're trying to get the patients too. We're working on it.
Yeah, you're doing
Yeah,
that.
okay,
That's
yes,
why,
too, yeah.
for people to hear your story and what you came from, because I guarantee you there's someone listening right now saying, I have all those same problems and no one's doing anything to help me. And
Yeah.
to hear your story gives people hope. And that's what we want to provide, is hope for people to say, you don't have to suffer. You don't have to be on all these medications and just not feeling great, where you can't be a good mom. You don't even remember part of your life because you're drugged up the whole time because of pain. And, to say, okay, I'm going to go against what they're saying and get better. And then, you just realize that. But hopefully, because of your story, your doctor's now going to say, hey, you know what? You got all these problems. Maybe Roxana can help you out. Like, let's hear what she's doing. Let's start a little group and start, encouraging each other and doing that. This is where we're going to change medicine, because it doesn't have to be one-on-one. I think, having group like what Tro's doing and I'm doing the same thing with an app also, is that people can have this information available to them 24/7 if they want to just live this and learn and get themselves healthier. Because once you start feeling better, like for you, I saw your eyes light up when you said, I love exercising now. You probably hated it when you were miserable. And on OxyContin and all this stuff, right? And so they were telling you need to exercise more, but when you're miserable and hurting and in pain and depressed and anxious, how are you going to exercise?
I cannot move more, and I cannot eat less when I'm constantly hungry. But now I'm just satiated. And this is the number one thing that you need. You need to be satiated. Not Dr.
Tro
Gary
says
Taub
that.
said.
Yeah.
Gary Taub said, like, the same thing that we tell people to work up an appetite, eat less and move more, is the same thing we tell obese people to do to lose weight. And he said there's something wrong with this.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think there's, look, bottom line is, your story is inspiring, and the current advice needs to change, and these people are stuck, and they're going to harm a lot of people. And we're trying to reach them with this. We're trying to wake up people, and it's people like you who we really love to hear from, because, I know that your group is like 2,000 strong, and that is 5,000 strong.
As of yesterday, yeah.
Right? 5,000 strong, and those are 5,000 lives. And they need people like you. At some point, they'll also need doctors. And so that's hopefully the mission that me and Brian can fulfill, to be able to reach those people, because they'll love to hear it from you. Then they will go to their doctor, and their doctor will say, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard. You're going to kill your kidney. And we have to do better.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. Brian, any parting words of wisdom for us?
Yeah, just the whole thing, just something you said in passing, one of the biggest indicators of cardiovascular death and all-cause mortality in a diabetic is having protein in the urine. And you said you reversed that, right? By doing the diet that they told you was not going to, that's going to make that worse. That's the irony of the whole thing, is like, oh my gosh, sometimes we're harming people by not being educated. So when we keep seeing these things over and over, it is just so amazing. And so, yeah, I think your story is so inspiring, and I love it. And again, we'll put links to everyone so they can find you. But just one more time for people who didn't write it down the first time, how do they find you?
So the group is Reversing Insulin Resistance on Facebook. And I think there's only one group with that name, Reversing Insulin Resistance. And the website is reversing-insulin-resistance.com.
Awesome stuff.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, everyone, thanks for listening, and Patreon supporters, thank you for joining us, and our patients. And Tro, are there any questions that we can do real quick? Or
there was one here, just kind of echoing the same thing, like, how do we educate doctors? One of them is concerned about ketoacidosis, and how do you go about educating your doctor? I'd say go in with studies, go in with information, have it written down, and see what they say. There's nothing more to do than that.
And have them explain the difference. Say, doctor, can you explain to me the difference between ketosis and ketoacidosis? They have a lot of the same letters, but they're totally different things. So can you explain that to me, doctor? And they won't be able to.
And we got Vic, who gave you a shout out. Vic, oh my God, love his pizza dough. Vic says, Roxanne, you're doing a great job on social media. So, all right, guys. Thank you.
Awesome stuff.
Roxanne,
Everyone, thank you.
So
Roxana, thank you so much. Great to meet you in person now. I mean, over Zoom, but face to face.
Yes. I'll see you at Boca next year.
All right, that's a plan. We get Tro there.
I'll be there, hopefully.
Oh, cool.